The title of this session is Thriving with Wind. And so, how many folks in the room have been in the business of directly or indirectly helping do rural economic development in your lifetime? Very many? Well, I'll tell you, it's a challenge, and that economic development in rural communities is a fundamentally different beast than it is if you're already in an advantaged community that has all of the assets, all of the benefits, all of the resources, all of the population, all of the money, all of the other things. And it's a challenge anywhere. But if you don't have all of those things and you're in a rural community and you're trying to help do economic development, you can't just do the same things that you do in an urban setting and think it's going to work. So it needs to be rural and ag appropriate. And so in my lifetime, I've been either a public official or the head of a farm organization since 1974. And I've worked on economic development issues. And so every once in a while, you see something that shows up and you go, boy, if we could make this work, it would be a really big deal. And two of the big deals that we have worked on in my go is ethanol. So we're the number 2 ethanol producing state in the country. It has made a huge difference in the value of our commodities, the quality, new tax base, over $5 billion of capital investment. And so all of the things that we've done with ethanol have been not only value added for the folks who own the corn, but also the rural communities. So it's been a game changer for a lot of communities that have ethanol in them. So when we looked at wind, we said this has the same kind of potential upside. And so the panel that we have today is going to describe what a 400 megawatts of wind project in their county looks like through their eyes. And in my farmer, really technical, complicated way, I always try to walk around the barn and paint all 4 sides. So when we do presentations. And so here we have folks that represent economic development efforts, folks that are county commissioners, folks that represent education, and folks that are landowners. And so that will give you kind of a walk around from their perspective how all of this has worked in their home county of Holt, which is from my home area of Madison County right up the road. I used to go to O'Neill and get parts, so I'm familiar with your community. And so to start it all off is Darby Paxton, and he's the Executive Director of the Holt County Economic Development. It is a county that is a very interesting county. It's the edge of the Sandhills. It also has a lot of ag land in it. It's got a lot of pasture land in it. It has 10,200 residents in 8 separate communities that relies predominantly on agriculture and ag-related businesses. And Darby enjoys servicing the local entrepreneurs, school youth, and established business owners by offering them the many services of the economic development entities. And is the father of 5 boys, and that's what we like to see, is the folks who move into rural communities who have a lot of kids. He is motivated by making the county around him a great place to raise a family and instill a mindset that we are stronger as one community. Darby Paxton, you're up front. Take it away.
Thank you, John. I appreciate the opportunity to tell Holt County's story regarding wind development. I believe it's a story of great success. So a little background. First, I think we're asked again to speak on behalf of Holt County just because it is the largest wind farm in Nebraska currently. Now hearing today that there is going to be bigger, we're going to have to up our game a little bit. So just a little background about our project. It is a 400 megawatt wind project consisting of 200 2-megawatt wind turbines. Construction began in August of 2015 and it was completed in November of 2016, so just over a year. Approximately 40 participating landowners and 45,000 acre project site. Try that one. So I just wanted to give you what we're looking at here. Our county assessor website allows us to use a wind tower overlay that they put on here. So this is a 10 mile by 10 mile. You can see that how many wind towers are in that grid right there. The local benefits during the construction of the Grand Prairie Wind Project, 350 temporary jobs were created in Holt County. For the amount of temporary jobs created, your rentals were full, campers were purchased, camper sites were created by businesses and local entrepreneurs who saw that as an opportunity. 7.7 million generated in direct local construction spending. That was with hauling and moving the earth. 6.3 million invested in approximately 72 miles of public road improvements. These are roads that were upgraded to some of our best roads, and Steve will speak on more of that later. The O'Neill local total sales tax was increased by $145,000 in the year of 2016. So anytime I would go and visit businesses, they would report back to me that that was one of their greatest years that they've had and still is. The local benefits during operation, now we're in the operating stage. 25 new permanent full-time jobs created in Holt County. And as Amy spoke earlier, these are jobs that Northeast Community College is now offering a diploma and associated degrees in wind energy. We have a satellite Northeast Community College in O'Neill itself, so hopefully someday we can maybe do those in-house right there in O'Neill. I think they can probably use the ITV system right now to do some of those classes. But we're training our own workforce, which is important to rural Nebraska. More than $2 million per year in landowner payments. This again provides opportunity for our landowners to make more of a profit on their land than they're able to, especially in years like this one. Yearly increase in property tax paid by the Grand Prairie Wind of close to $600,000. That's added to the tax roll yearly. The assessed value doesn't change, but the levy does. So that number changes every year. The nameplate tax of $1.4 million, that is paid quarterly. The $80,000 in annual donations to local community foundation funds, they signed a 5-year commitment to do that. Now this is given to the Nebraska Community Foundation in one lump sum, and they divvy that out throughout the communities. They originally were going to go to each community and set up an application process, but they wanted to bypass that. They wanted to use the people in their communities who know what they need to use that money for what they need it for. So rather than them determining, well, a playground set is what you're most needed in your community, they're going to allow the locals to do that. So again, they're doing that for 5 years. So $400,000 just in giving. One common phrase in economic development is unintended consequences. In this case, we have a positive unintended consequence because of the wind tower project, Grand Prairie Wind Tower Project in Holt County. O'Neill was able to attract transportation partners and logistics to store and maintain wind tower components and supply wind tower projects within a 300-mile radius of Holt County. So literally TP&L blew in overnight, pardon the pun, by buying land, leasing buildings, hauling gravel, spending money. They purchased hotel rooms, gas, they were eating at restaurants, they're buying vehicles, they're buying side-by-sides, tools, cell phones, etc. Just all of a sudden, this happened overnight. So they brought to town with them 25 full-time jobs as well. Now, it takes 8 truckloads to bring in a wind tower. Each truck has a pilot car, and for the first 8 months in O'Neill, they brought in 200 wind towers. That's 3,200 extra vehicles, and they also utilized the railroad to bring in some of the blades. So altogether, because of wind energy, 50 jobs were created, and millions of dollars have been collected, and roads improved in Holt County, and that's just part of the economic impact that we've seen from this development in Holt County.
Steve Bossert is the chairman of the Holt County Board of Equalization. He's a lifelong resident of Holt County. He's been a supervisor for 7 years, which in most people's lives would be more like 49, I suspect. Steve, he and his wife Ellen own a ranch north of O'Neill, raising Angus cattle and growing corn and soybeans. He worked with Berkshire Hathaway Energy when the Grand Prairie Wind Farm was developed in Holt County. In 2014, we're pleased to have Steve Bossert. Take it away.
Good morning, everybody. Well, in around 2012, Geronimo Energy come to town and developed what is now called the Grand Prairie Wind Farm. And first they had to get a conditional use permit, and get that set up. Once that was done, we started out on the road haul agreement. And that is a huge thing. It just has to be done. This particular road haul, they used about 70 miles of road that they had to upgrade, and that was somewhere in the $6 or $7 million that it cost to upgrade these roads. They had rock trucks hauling rock out of South Dakota for months, and 30, 40, 50 truckloads a day, or 50 trucks at a time hauling rock to all these roads to support the weight and whatnot and the amount of traffic that they was going to use. It was the biggest thing was the logistics of the thing. It was such a huge project. It was 50,000 acres or whatever it was, and scattered out, and the amount of roads they had to use, the amount of trucks, different trucks. They had their own batch plant out there for concrete. There was constantly something would happen and they'd have to go to a different road, and so we was always working on, and communication was key. We had what we called Windmill Wednesday, where it was myself and the road superintendent would go out there, and we'd have meetings with them for 2 or 3 hours and just talk about what was going to happen. They were very good. BHE was very good with working with the county. They give the farmers and ranchers the right of way. If somebody was moving equipment, because this went through basically 2 harvests, they would stop whatever they were doing, wherever they was at, and they would stop, let the farmer go by, get the combines by, and keep on going. And so it was really key for that, because everybody had to work together out there, and very few complaints with the farmers and ranchers. A few times somebody would leave a gate open and cattle would get out, but it was very minimal. And like I said, BHE was top notch to work with. I have nothing bad. Only one time did it ever get a little bit sideways on a road project, and if Alicia, if you're out there listening, I won. And but other than that, it was a very good project. The decommissioning plan was kind of a last minute deal. Didn't really know much about it. We know more about it now. I think it would be something that we need to look a little bit harder in to figure that out, because nobody's really ever decommissioned anything. So it's hard to be an expert on something that nobody's ever done. And so that's one thing that I wish we would have delved into a little bit more. But I guess that's all I got, guys.
Next up is Amy Shane. She is the executive director and currently serves as the superintendent of O'Neill Public Schools. And she began her current position in 2006 after serving as the elementary principal for O'Neill Elementary School from 1999 to 2006. Her career started as a teacher in the Houston Independent School District in 1985. Her first administrative position came as the K-8 principal for Holt County and Garfield County Rural Schools, where she eventually served as superintendent of Holt County for 3 years. Additionally, she serves on the Nebraska State Accreditation Committee and is a member of the O'Neill Lions and Rotary Clubs. Amy, take it away.
Okay, thanks, John. Happy to be here and talk about how the Grand Prairie Wind Farm impacted our school district. It certainly did. The project that it had the most impact on was many, many, many years in the making. O'Neill Public Schools, as many of our rural school districts, was experiencing facility aging. You know, so many of our schools are showing their age. They're perhaps 100 years old, et cetera. We were utilizing a 1938 building for our special education. Some of our most severe and profound students, disabled students, were being educated off-site in the 1938 building. We're also transporting our junior high students to that building for practices and PE time. We had 4 modular classrooms that were put in place 30 years ago, and they were supposed to be a temporary solution to some space issues that we had, and we're still there. And so I've been blessed to work with wonderful school board over the past 13 years. Actually, this is year 21 in the district, which is pretty amazing. I'm not sure how that happened, but they recognized that we needed to do something in regards to the facilities that our children were learning in. And so back in 2008, they worked very hard to put together a project and hold a bond election to try and fund new addition and renovations at their junior senior high school. And for a number of reasons, and all understandable reasons, we have a K-12 private school in our community. That always makes passing a bond a little more challenging than in other places. As well as we have, agriculture is our bread and butter. It's what we do. And at the time we were trying to pass that bond election, everyone's valuations were going up, and hence so were their property taxes. It was a very tough time. And so it failed, I'm sorry to say, miserably in 2008. And so the school board took a step back from that. It didn't change the fact that our facilities were aging. They needed something to be done for the education of the students they were serving. So in 2014, the school board energized itself, reinvigorated itself, and put into place one of their 3 goals for the next 5 years was to get something done as far as that junior senior high facility, to improve that. And the mechanism that they chose to do that by was somewhat controversial. It was a lease purchase, a 7-year lease purchase construction project. And happily, I guess, for the school board and for our school students, the Grand Prairie Wind Farm came about in that same time period. And I won't claim to understand a lot about the tax end of wind energy, but I do know that our district has benefited from what they call the nameplate capacity tax. And by the time our 7-year lease purchase is complete, our renovation is a $13.27 million addition to that junior senior high school. And the nameplate capacity tax will in one way or another take care of close to half of that cost that won't have to be borne by the taxpayers, the farmers, everyone in our district. So that's how it has most impacted us. I put together, these are the payments that we received. When the wind farm went into operation, it was not a full year, so that's why you see those first, actually 5 payments were a little smaller. Those come through our regular property taxes. When we get our taxes from our county treasurer, they're a separate line item on there. It was new to all of us, our county treasurer too. You can see the first payment we got was $28,000, and the next month already she said, we didn't divide that up quite right. Here's a little bit more. And I believe Darby mentioned it is a quarterly payment, and from then on you can see how those have come in. From the school administrator side of it, we haven't quite evened out when those quarters are. I kind of expected we'd pick 4 months and they'd always come in those 4 months, and you can see they don't always, but they come, and that's the important part because it has provided tax relief for our landowners in regards to the project. So I'll tell you just a little bit about our project because I'm really proud of it, proud of our school board for continuing to work on behalf of our kids. The inside of the picture you see up there was our existing building, and the blue area to the north, those are 3 new high school state-of-the-art science classrooms. We'll never have trouble hiring another science teacher ever. They're wonderful, and our science teachers and students are so appreciative. They're able to do many wonderful things in those facilities. I'd say there's some small colleges that probably don't have facilities as nice as these science rooms. They're very good. On the, as you come around in the blue, that is the area where we are educating our students that were being educated in the 1938 building, our students with the most severe disabilities. They have a life skills kitchen. For many of those students, their goal is to be able to live independently and learn to take care of themselves, and this facility is wonderful. We moved into the blue, orange, and yellow areas at the beginning of this school year. Construction started in the summer of 2018. We were able to move into those sections when school started. They've been fantastic. In the orange area, that's new administrative offices and some new junior high, middle school classrooms, as well as those yellow areas. Those are all middle school classrooms. Previously, it was a 7-12 building, and our 7th and 8th graders intermingled with our high school kids, which we didn't love. We had a separate bell system, so they weren't in the hallways between classes at the same time. But this has given us the opportunity to separate those 7th and 8th grade students from the high school population. It's been fantastic. We put doors in the existing classrooms that used to be the outside. We built around, as you can see, and so they don't need to really leave that one hallway, our 7th and 8th graders, any longer, which has been terrific for them. There's also a very nice, you'll see here in a minute, commons area, so when they come in the morning, there's a place for those 7th and 8th graders. Also, we had a good problem, increase in enrollment at our elementary school in our lower grades, and so we did build 3 additional classrooms that could house 6th grade, if that was something the district chose to do. So those are also, we're currently exploring whether or not we want to bring our 6th graders over to this building for the 2021 school year. So I'll just take you through a few construction pictures, and then my piece is done. You can see the modular classroom. We had 4 of those with students leaving the building for obvious weather-related and safety reasons. That wasn't great. Let's see what you're seeing here. Just the beginning of the building process here. That area is the new activities entrance. We are hoping to be into our new music room. Our former, well, it's still our current, we're using it now, music room shares a wall with our library. Not exactly the best situation for education, but for developing music lovers, it's great. But they will now be off on the edge, the far east side of the building. And then we also have a new performance gym. As I said, we were busing students to our 1938 building for practices in PE, and we'll no longer have to do that. And this is just a shot of some of those 7th and 8th graders that I was talking about enjoying their new commons area in the morning. It's been wonderful. They take a lot of pride in the new addition that we have at this building, and nameplate capacity taxes have been a blessing to us in the building project. So that's all I have. I'll turn it over to Mike.
And so Mike is a 3rd-generation farmer, rancher in Holt County. He was chairman of the landowners group for the Grand Prairie Wind Energy Project, a 400-megawatt wind farm northeast of O'Neill. with his wife Shelley. They raised their two boys, Mark and Kevin, on the same farm he grew up on with 8 siblings. I only had 6, so you're lucky. They are surrounded by 200 beautiful turbines and could not be happier about it. And so from a landowner's perspective, Mike, take it away.
Thanks, John. Good morning, everyone. I would like you all to know that I was originally well over 6 foot tall before these dang turbines showed up, so be warned. But no, just kidding. I'd like to thank John and the rest of the committee for inviting us here today. I'm a little biased, but I think we've got a great story out there in Holt County. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the rest of the panel. This is a great representation of the local support that we had with Grand Prairie. Amy is one of our community leaders. She, along with several other key local leaders, quickly recognized the potential benefits, both economic and tax benefits of a project like ours. And through their support behind the project early on, that was very important from our perspective. It gave us some local credibility and gave the general public some much needed reassurance that this project had merit and was worth pursuing. Darby's organization was very crucial, especially during the construction phase, with those 350 workers here for the better part of 2 years. You can imagine the logistics necessary to accommodate that number in such a small community as ours. And among many other things, they set up a wonderful website full of resources for those workers, not just food and lodging, but where do you get your hair cut, where do you do your laundry, where do you get your oil change, et cetera, et cetera. The approximately 2-year construction phase was definitely organized chaos, but it was much more organized and much less chaotic thanks to Darby's group, so thank you for that. Last but not least, we have Steve and the rest of the Board of Supervisors. Those guys were amazing. We are an agricultural county, and we do ag very well. We're at or near the top of many national statistics. And so when we walked in and said, hey, we want to build a 200-tower, 400-megawatt wind farm, and by the way, we'd like to site it in some of your most productive irrigated ground in the county, they could have easily just said thanks, but no thanks. To their credit, they did not. They educated themselves, they did their research, and then they rolled up their sleeves and went to work. And here we are, thanks in no small part to their hard work and determination. So I can honestly say that we would not be here, and the project would not be here without this local support. So thank you so much for that. I'd also like to quickly touch on the wind energy companies that we had the pleasure of working with. Our development team was off the charts, I think best in the business. The construction team was very accommodating, very professional. That went much better than I anticipated. And then, of course, our final ownership and operating company has been wonderful. Across the board, all of those entities, their word was good. They were very capable, very competent. And I can only speak for the companies that I worked with, but if all the renewable companies are of that caliber, then Nebraska is in very good hands. So thank you to them. As far as my experiences, as John said, I was chairman of the landowners group during negotiations, development and construction, and now I'm just a participating landowner. There are 14 turbines less than a mile from our front door. There are 34 turbines less than 2 miles from our front door. So when I say that I'm going to speak about living with wind energy, it's definitely a real world experience, nothing abstract there. First thing most people ask is the noise. Do they make noise? How bad is that? Yes, they do make noise, as does everything that the wind hits. The good news is that, at least in our case, it's very negligible. One of the things that surprised me most through this process was how much ambient noise our farm already had. I've literally lived there all my life and didn't realize, but every structure, drain bin, every outbuilding, and especially every tree makes a certain amount of noise when the wind hits it. That's just physics. And you don't think about it, but cumulative, it adds up. In our case, it almost completely offsets whatever the turbines throw at us. We have a lot of trees around our farmstead, and so I kind of get amused when I see people lobbying for these overly strict standards on turbine noise. And I think, if they would apply those same standards to trees, we'd have to cut a lot of them down. I mean, that's just the way it is. Things make noise when the wind blows. The next thing most people ask is, how does it affect our livestock? And I'm happy to say, in the 3 years of operation, it does not. The only time my herd, we have a cow-calf operation, and so our herd lives under these turbines 365 days a year. The only time that I've ever seen them remotely aware of turbines is in the heat of the summer. They will seek out the shadow cast by the turbine tower and take advantage of that shade. So if you come to our place in the middle of a hot, sunny July day, you'll probably see my cow herd in a long, skinny line, and they'll actually move as the sun shifts. It's quite a sight to see. Wildlife, same story. We have as many or more numbers as we ever have. We got last couple of years have been wet, and so that increases cover. Numbers have gone up, but we have deer, foxes, coyotes, raccoons, et cetera, et cetera. And again, they seem completely oblivious to the wind project. Bird kill, I was very interested in that during development. I had read all the studies, and they varied so widely that I had no idea what to expect when we had ours up and running. And so in a very unscientific study, there are 2 turbines on my property that I pass under multiple times a day through the course of my work. And so I always take that opportunity to scan the ground beneath and around these 2 turbines. And finally this summer, I found one bird that most obviously had hit either the tower or the blade. Out of 3 years, I've literally found one bird. To put that in perspective, my wife Shelley and I have probably hit 50 birds in those same 3 years with our vehicles just driving up and down the road. So in my mind, at least on our project, I do not see bird kill as a statistically significant factor. I don't know how many of you are egg producers here. If you are, I do not have to tell you how bad things are right now. Nothing is working economically in the egg sector. It's tough times. These steady supplemental income that hosting turbines provides are a great additional diversity in good times for us. But in times like these, they're an absolute godsend. We actually feel somewhat survivor's guilt because a lot of producers do not have that to rely on. And it'd be my great wish that every farm family in Nebraska would at least have the opportunity to host either wind turbines or solar panels. I cannot say enough how well that complements a cyclical industry like production ag. John, I could go on for hours, but I know you want to get some questions in, so I will turn it back to you.
Well, thank you, Mike, and don't worry, they have more questions for you.
Okay.
Did the transmission lines cause issues, and if so, how were they resolved?
Most of our grid is underground. After the substations, they do their overhead to the main interconnect. There was some logistics, I think, as far as getting through properties. There was a rural, very old rural cemetery that they actually had to run the overhead transmission line around just out of respect for the cemetery. They didn't want to run it over. So some minor difficulties, but overall, no, I don't think that caused any problem. As far as the main transmission that pipes this power out, That was already there, the Western Area Power line. So they built the interconnect on the edge of that, on the edge of our project, and really no challenges there, I guess.
Have farmers had to make changes to crop dusting methods?
To crop dusting?
Crop dusting methods.
Oh, I'm certain.
Either you or Steve.
Yeah, and Steve can touch on this too. Certainly they've had to, you know, FAA is heavily involved with a project like this. And it is definitely not my area of expertise, but that being said, there are crop dusting operations in our neighborhood. It's still being done, but I assume they have to be much more careful now.
I got two friends that are spray pilots, and well, of course, they're about half insane anyway, but they really didn't
We
change.
may know some of the same ones.
Exactly. But, there's a lot of potatoes growing out there, and they have to spray them continuously with something or other, and but they really didn't change much of anything that I'm aware of. At least they never said anything anyway.
Okay. Other questions?
I
And
guess
Amy,
I'd
if you'd
speak.
repeat the question for us, please.
Sure. I'm curious as to whether we've noticed a difference maybe in school enrollment or those kinds of things brought families to the area. And yes, it has. Not all of the 25 or 50 jobs that have been created are, a lot of them are single gentlemen that are working on the wind towers, but there have been a few families that have come. It's actually benefited some of our high school students in that I've got some graduates that have come back and are now working in the industry, and that's pretty exciting for us. New career pathways that we've been able to explore.
And Amy, another question. Does the money the school district receives from the wind development reduce the amount of school state aid they receive?
Unfortunately, about 10 years ago, we became a non-equalized school district anyway because of the the dramatic increase in valuation of our ag land. We don't receive any equalization aid from the state, so it's had no impact on that. It's actually helped to allow us to give a little bit of tax relief, so.
Which, for a lot of folks who don't do education, you might be surprised, but 64% of all the schools in the state of Nebraska do not get state equalization aid through the TIOSA formula. So the business of property tax relief and new tax base are in the middle of a lot of discussions in rural communities. And so there's this conflict between the folks who pay a disproportionate share of the taxes and the education community. And so there is an inherent conflict. I was thinking back to your bond issue, Elkhorn Valley. It only took us 14 tries to get the bond approved to build the new grade school in Tilden. And the state fire marshal cheated and put his hand on the scale because he condemned our grade school in Meadowgrove. And so when my kids were in school, we had different sized buckets with numbers based on the size of the leak. And so then when it rained, the kids were all part of the bucket brigade, and it was all about getting the right size buckets on the number on the floor. So the issue of funding schools is not a minor one when you think about all of this. And I'm also thinking back to the discussions that one of the primary sponsor of the legislation that created and made all of this possible, LB 629, Cap Dirks, Holt County.
He was a Holt County. He still lives in Holt County. Cap is a great guy. I did want to mention that with the lease purchase financing that we have used, there's a maximum of 7 years that you can engage in this lease purchase. So after that time, the approximately $800,000 that we're putting towards payments for the building will go into tax relief. So we're looking forward to year 8, 9, and 10, where we can utilize those funds for property tax relief primarily.
As Cap Dirks opined one day when we were talking about the potential of this future industry, he said, money doesn't solve all problems, but if you have more of it, it gives you a lot better field position if you want to work on it. And so it is. And so Holt County, his home county, is, I think, a success story. And I see Don Pricer sitting in the back of the room stand up and say hi. He's also one of the first sponsors of LB 629 that opened all this up. And he and Cap were my co-chairs when we first started this 12 years ago. So I think the way that I look at Holt County, and one of the reasons we picked it, is it's a county that made the decision to be open for business and take advantage of their natural resource. And it has, without, you know, there's always bumps in the road, but in the whole, as you look at it, their county is a lot better today and has a lot of things going for it that it wouldn't have had it not taken advantage of the opportunity. Let's give this panel a big hand.